Hi, everybody. I am so excited about today's presentation because, well, it's me and a couple of cool guys. So, we are so excited to get your mindset right and start thinking about post COVID and how amazing it is going to be for your practice. So, before we get started, this webinar is being recorded. You don't have to request the recording because I'm going to send it right to you after we get done today. Make sure you submit your questions through the chat box. And if for any reason you lose audio or the screen freezes up, just refresh your screen. It's your internet connectivity, which has been hit or miss for all of us lately, but it will pop right back on in. So today's presenters, we're going to be starting off with Dr. Jay Greenstein. He is a Maryland native, graduated from the University of Maryland, got his doctorate of chiropractic from National College of Chiropractic, and he has a amazing group of practices. They are the Sport and Spine Rehab and Athletics. He is also the president of the Sport and Spine Rehab Clinical Research Foundation and founder and CEO of Cuz Innovation, which is a consulting and leading edge firm to help doctors and a wide variety of companies to improve their organizational performance. And he's pretty good at it. And we have Dr. Scott Munsterman, who is no stranger to all of you. As we know, he is an expert when it comes to transforming the model of healthcare and has a long-standing commitment for the promotion and advancement of the chiropractic profession. He is also a compliance expert. He loves compliance as much as I do. We are simpatico in that way. And I cannot even begin to tell you the amount of knowledge the man has in his head and how incredibly grateful we are that he is so willing to share that with us. And then we have the Aaron Reynolds. Some of you may think that he looks familiar because he's been in chiropractic for a very long time. He is the CEO and managing partner of SalesWorks. So his job is to help businesses and consulting and strategy and helping to grow and expand and definitely think outside of the box. He's really good at pushing people to their limits and then some. You will find out exactly how strong you are after a session with Aaron Reynolds. And finally, we have me bringing it all in together. I'm the Director of Business Relations for ChiroHealthUSA. And y'all are all familiar with me because we spend a lot of time together, especially lately. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron to give us, just tell us what we're going to learn today, and then we'll get started.
Well, thanks, Kristi, and I hope they're fun sessions. I don't want them to be painful sessions, that's for sure, but we certainly do want to think outside the box a little bit. I am beyond excited to kind of go through the next few minutes with you guys through some of the content, through some of the questions from different thinking and from different leaders within this profession. When we were talking last week, we just had a ton of great questions come up, and we've been talking for a few weeks about getting some kind of a panel discussion together just to hit a few different high notes, come at it kind of from a high level to give you that roadmap to get back to what we're going to. As you heard me say last week, I'm really focused on let's get back to better. I don't know what normal was, and so I certainly don't know what a new normal is, but I know how to be better than I was going into this, and I think I know what better looks like. And if we do our job right, not only on this webinar, but with some of the tools and thoughts and ideas we're going to give you when you go back to your practices, I think you're going to find your way to better as well. So we're going to touch on a few different topics today, from how to kind of get the mindset, maybe 2 or 3 things you need to take away from a OSHA/compliance standpoint. I'm going to go through an exercise with you guys on the power of outsourcing, and then we're going to let Kristi take it on home. We did have Dr. Conway joining us today to talk about some of the legal stuff, but this is absolutely no joke. Every single one of us has had an internet issue today because we're all dealing with what we're all dealing with. Unfortunately, Dr. Conway couldn't get back up, so we're going to make our way through this. We will try not to pretend to be lawyers here. We'll definitely cover what we know, and we're just excited. Feel free to ask questions. We'll do our best to get to as many as we can today. And if there are questions we can't get to, we certainly will come back together to do more of this. So this will be a little bit of a combination of presentation / question answering / fun And so if you're in your office right now, great. If you're at home, do what you need to do to get comfortable and enjoy. And I'm excited for this to kick off with my good friend, Dr. J.
Mm-hmm. What's up, you guys? It is so great to be here. I appreciate the invite to the panel. I'm not only excited to present something really new that I've never presented before, but also to hear what you guys have to say, because I just love listening to you guys and learning from you guys every time I hear you all speak. So I'm going to share my screen because I tend to be the difficult one in the group. And can you guys see my screen now? Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Great. All right, so today we're going to be talking about mindset mastery. This is going to be a very quick guide, but I think an important guide to life-changing empowerment. And empowerment is a very important word. Today's discussion is no bullshit, guys. You're not going to hear things that are fluffy. It's like, oh, just think positive and positive things will happen. Yes, we do need to think positive. It's very important for our mindset to think positively, but also at the end of the day, there's a lot more work that goes into creating the right mindset for, as Aaron said, even better. What we are going to talk about today is stoicism and philosophy. We're also going to talk about the latest developments in neuroscience, specifically as it relates to personal development. And we're going to talk about positive psychology and how the importance of perseverance and grit ties to our future success. Now, if anybody's ever hit rock bottom, and I don't mean like you've hit a rock that looks like a bottom, but you've actually hit a low point in your life, it's never a fun place to be. It can be very challenging, very difficult, very taxing, and it can create all sorts of challenges in both our professional and our personal lives. And I know, because I've been there, guys. I've been there multiple times. In the 26 years of running my companies, I've had great highs and I've had some really, really difficult lows. But all of those lows prepare me for the next challenge. There have been times that I've said, you know what, if one more bad thing happens, I just can't take it anymore. I just don't know what I'm going to do. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we all have to pick ourselves up at our lowest lows and put in the fucking work. Yes, I use the F-bomb. We got to put in the fucking work, because it's not just about positive thinking. It's about everything that happens after that. One of the greatest books that's got me through a variety of challenges in my life is called The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. Now, Ryan's an expert in stoicism and philosophy. He's a New York Times best-selling author, and I love this quote. The obstacle in the path becomes the path. Never forget, within every obstacle is an opportunity to improve our condition. Every challenge that we face in our lives, both personal and professional, is always an opportunity for us to learn and improve and, again, be better. Speaking of challenges, look, we know we're in a massive worldwide pandemic, but we have really a trifecta of pandemics going on. We've got the healthcare pandemic, but we've also got the financial crisis with over 22 million people that are unemployed. And we've got an anxiety pandemic as well. I mean, people are really suffering out there, both in terms of fearing for their health, understanding what's going to happen with their future, their profession, their families. All of this is creating a tremendous amount of anxiety. So I ask you, what do you believe? Do you believe that my practice will come out stronger? Or do you believe my practice will struggle? Do you believe this is a great time to work on the business instead of in the business and innovate? Or do you believe I'm so overwhelmed, I don't even know where to begin? What you believe matters. This is my good friend, David Bayer. David is one of the leaders and an expert in neuropsychologically based, neurophysiologically based personal development. And this is a model that he developed called the 5 primary drivers. So everybody has beliefs, right? We're born, our parents raise us, they instill beliefs in us. We go to church, we go to synagogue, we go to the mosque, we go anywhere where we're influenced by others. We go to school and we develop these beliefs. These beliefs then drive our thoughts. Our thoughts in turn drive our feelings. Our feelings then drive our actions. Our actions certainly drive our results. And our results either confirm our beliefs or give us the opportunity to create new ones and hopefully better beliefs. David talks about two states of beings in our brain. One state is a beautiful state. We have these amazing emotions and feelings of hope and gratitude, joy, compassion, peace, curiosity, courageousness, optimism. But we also have these primal states where we have stress and anxiety and overwhelm and anger, impatience, jealousy, sadness, and rage. Now, our brains can only occupy one thought at a time. And we know from the neuroscience that these primal states and beautiful states can go back and forth a variety of ways during our day, during our week, during our month, during our lifetime. But the goal for us, the mind hack, as he calls it, is to do everything we can to remain as long as possible in a beautiful state. So if we're in a primal state, how do we get out? How do we literally hack our own brains, hack our own minds to get back into a beautiful state where we can use that creativity, we can use that curiosity, we can use that courageousness to drive an even better professional and personal life? So I ask you, what state are you in? And more importantly, people, what state are you choosing to be in? Because it is a choice. Because we have a choice to make a new decision. We get to decide what state we are in. So again, how do we make a new decision? I'm going to walk you through 5 simple steps of how we can make a new decision and change our mindset, change our state, and ultimately change the outcome. The first step is really finding time for stillness, whether it's meditation or yoga, taking a walk by yourself, sitting quietly in a room, sitting on a mountaintop. The opportunity for us to get rid of all the distractions, all the noise, all the media and news and social networks that we're involved in, and literally let our brain function in its highest capacity where we can think. We can think about how we feel. Yes, guys, we do have feelings. It's okay to go there. We can think about what we want for our lives, what's next. We can understand what's causing the greatest fears and anxiety in our lives, but it takes time and it takes mental discipline to be still and literally let your brain do the work it needs to do. Again, Ryan Holiday, one of my favorite authors. I think he'll go down as one of the best authors of the 21st century. He's a New York Times best-selling author. His most recent book is called Stillness is the Key. And he states we must cultivate mental stillness to succeed in life and to successfully navigate the many crises it throws our way. And I think many crises is important because we don't just have one, like we have many challenges in our lives. The less energy we waste regretting the past or worrying about the future, the more energy we will have for what's in front of us. And whatever you face, whatever you're doing will require, first and foremost, that you don't defeat yourself. And that starts with your mindset. So after you spend some time alone and really letting your brain do the job it's designed to do, the next step is to really identify those beliefs. So what are your beliefs? My practice will come out stronger, or my practice will struggle, which we would call a limiting belief. So once you've identified that belief, and you have to, again, this is a skill set that we develop over time, like what am I actually feeling? What beliefs are driving those feelings? Once we understand that and we've identified it, the next step is you gotta dig deep. And the best way to dig deep around your thoughts and your beliefs and your feelings is to ask the 5 whys. So let's walk through this with that limiting belief. So that limiting belief is my practice will struggle. So the first why is, well, okay, why? Why won't my practice struggle? Well, people are afraid to go out. Again, possibly a limiting belief, possibly true, but that's the first why. The second why is, well, why are people afraid to go out? It's because they're afraid of getting COVID. Well, why are they afraid of getting COVID? Because they feel it's not safe to go to public places. And why do they feel it's not safe to go to public places? Because they don't trust the sanitation efforts. And why don't they trust the sanitation efforts? It's because they don't know what businesses are doing to protect them. Now, you could go 7 whys, you could go 10 whys, but right there for me, there's enough. And so it's time to make that new decision. Instead of having the limiting belief, we're going to make a new decision. And what we're going to do is we're going to go from I'm so overwhelmed, I don't even know where to begin, to this is a great time to work on the business and innovate. So what we're going to do is we're going to take action. And the action that we're going to take to demonstrate how we're going to keep other people safe in order to help them understand why they should be coming back to us for the greatest healthcare in the world is we're going to create content for our audience. We're going to create content for our patients. We're going to create content for the general public. We're going to do Instagram stories to show how we're wearing masks, both patients and providers. We're wearing gloves. We're sanitizing the equipment, sanitizing the tables. If they really don't want to go out, how can we engage them in ways that they're not used to? Can we do a virtual consult? Can we walk them through an exercise program with telehealth? And the answer is yes and yes. It was interesting, before we got on this webinar today, we were all talking, and there was a leadership webinar that was put forth by NCMIC, and the CEO of ChiroHealthUSA, Dr. Ray Foxworth, was one of the guests. And some of the statistics that came up were how many providers were actually using telehealth. And I think it was like 39% were using telehealth and 61% were not. And I'm thinking to myself, how is that even possible? Guys, it's time to work on the business. And let's open up other channels and strategies to engage patients, to meet them where they are, which right now is home. So instead of worrying about your practice struggling, let's take action so that we can work on the business and innovate. Again, using video. That video we know creates more trust than any other medium, showing how we're sanitizing all the equipment that we're using in our practices. And again, using social media strategies, using email campaigns to let the public and your patients know what you're doing to keep them safe. Ultimately, at the end of the day, when you take action, you're going to get results. Now, sometimes the results are what you are looking for, and sometimes they are not. But that does not mean that you stop. So the idea of grit is really important, especially at a time like this. Again, it ties to the appropriate mindset. Grit means courage, bravery, strength of character, fortitude, tenacity. And of course, we know from the science, from the positive psychology science, that grit is the #1 predictor of success. Grit, by definition, is the intersection of passion and perseverance. So if we're passionate about something and we persevere long enough, we will create our own success. It's that level of perseverance when we get to the result stage of those 5 steps that I talked about in really creating a better mindset so that we can create success for our lives. It's that perseverance piece. It's that never, ever, ever giving up piece that will drive your ultimate success. So if you try some strategies and they don't work, it's okay. Use it as a learning experience. Remember what we talked about at the beginning, what Ryan Holiday said about the obstacle. The obstacle is the path. The obstacle is the path. Embrace it, leverage it, learn from it, and drive your future from it. So again, folks, I encourage you, when you're in a state of primal brain activity, strengthen your mind and make a new decision, because that truly is the bridge from where you are in a primal state to creating success and a beautiful state. Here are some resources for you. I'm not going to go through all of them, each one individually, but you've got neuroscience, personal development, you've got stoicism, and you've got positive psychology resources that we're making available to you. I know this tape will be available to you, but make sure you go back, check out those links. They can be extremely helpful. I was able to see Ryan Holiday at a recent event. I'm a founding member of an entrepreneurial event in DC called Cadre. Ryan was one of our guest speakers, and I love this quote that was at the end, and I think we can all take a great lesson from this, because life should be fun even when it's hard. You can do it. Make a new decision. If any of you guys need anything at all, I just wanted to leave you my email address. I and we are here to help you. It's drj@kaizenrate.com. My technology company is the best way to reach me. Feel free, reach out, ask questions. We will do anything we can to help you.
You know, Jay, I think, and I'm sure Kristi will chime in as well, but for me, as I start coaching and I start working with businesses regularly, so much of it is about the mindset. And I think people forget that. We just kind of show up and we get our hustle on, and then we forget to get to the mindset side of things. And right now, more than ever, even if you think this is not having an impact on your stress level, you're wrong. And I think we all kind of recognize that. This is impacting all of us in some way, shape, or form in a stressful manner. And what we continue to see, and you almost hear this universally, is people are either handling it really well or horribly. I mean, there doesn't seem to be a lot of gray area. It just seems to be kind of, you got it, I'm on top of it, or I'm really struggling. And so we want to continue to reaffirm the positive thoughts that are happening, but also lift people up who are struggling. There is absolutely a path out of it. And it starts with the decision making. If you believe you can, you can. If you believe you can't, you can't. It's cliche, but there's so much truth to it. It's wonderful information. I'm so glad you joined today, because this is as important as processes and anything else. So this will take us right into kind of our next speaker. But Kristi, anything you want to add or share as well, or do you just want to go into Dr. Munsterman? You decide.
Let's roll right into Dr. Munsterman.
So we've got Dr. Munsterman coming on again, because we are now talking about things that we just haven't had to talk about before. And we've all gotten to know Dr. Munsterman. I've been fortunate to work behind the scenes with him now for quite some time, but we've all gotten to know him. We've gotten to know his passion. His passion is for taking care and doing the heavy lifting for all of us, because quite frankly, as you heard me joke about last week, this is not always the fun stuff to talk about, but it's necessary. And as we go forward, if you cannot communicate your strategies for keeping your practice safe and allowing patients to come in, not fear-free, but comfortably, then you're going to struggle. And you heard Jay talk about it, but these are some of the I's you have to dot and T's you have to cross. So Dr. Munsterman, please share away.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Jay, I love just what you presented. And, and I think for the most part, a lot of people are in the primal state when we talk about compliance, right? And, the non-fun things, as Aaron's kind of made some sidebar comments to, but, really we just need to check fear in at the door and embrace the knowledge behind how we need to get things done, and it fits in beautifully with what you provided, Dr. J, in terms of identifying what your beliefs are and then digging deeper, and asking the why. Why do I fear this? Why that? And it all boils back down to understanding what the main issue is. And as we think about the experience that we've all had in this industry now over the last 6 to 8 weeks, it has been our profession's first rodeo in regards to exposure control, infectious disease control. OSHA regulations weren't something that any of us picked up on in chiropractic college. Frankly, it wasn't. Well, we are now, aren't we? And so as we take a look at what's going on, we presented a lot of material on this, but what do we need in place? Just understanding the fact that there is regulatory compliance when it comes to establishing safety of workers, but that also extends into our patient safety, as Dr. J had noted, and making sure that we have people understand that. And we've been talking about communicating to our patients about safety for the last almost 2 months now throughout this whole thing. And OSHA's jurisdiction is covering all employees that are compensated for work done. And so as we think about this exposure control and infectious disease control that we've been, encompassed in, if you will, that is one part of what we need to get right in our practice. And so it's understanding some of these other key policy areas that are just as important, that aren't as transparent possibly as what we have today, but they're just as important when it comes to getting the practice right. And it's coming to that knowledge base and understanding that, and being able to move forward and not be paralyzed in fear. And again, even from the OSHA perspective, we look at, the different things that should be covered. We have to take even a step back, maybe a little bit further at a 30,000 foot view, if you will, and understand a compliance program in general. What does that entail for our practices? We've had one thing come at us in a very magnified way, if you will, and it affected us. It maybe even disabled some practices, but then they got it down. They figured out how to begin to prepare their environment, to screen their patients, and to do all those things to adapt to the current situation. Well, again, that is one piece or one element of a full compliance issue, I should say, or elements that need to be in place within a compliance program. And so as we begin to think about this, and I'm not going to spend much more time on this subject now, but as you begin to think about this, begin to approach it from the standpoint of wanting to know, wanting to have the knowledge. And I'll just leave you with these questions, because it's all about establishing priorities. It's all about understanding, what are some of the answers to these questions? Do they present problems in how you're doing your business today? We certainly want to make sure that from a compliance perspective, that we have our bases covered and that we protect our practices, protect our livelihood, protect our patients, and provide a good, safe environment for just the great care that we have to provide. And so embracing this, get out of the fear state. Let's begin to work on the business. And this is an integral component of the business. I'll just share a couple of things. I mean, we've had a number of clients over the last 4 weeks, and especially over the last 2 weeks, have expressed their appreciation just getting things right. They're grateful because they've been able to stay in business, frankly, and that they've been able to keep their volumes sustainable and some of those things. And it's all about the mindset that Dr. J talked about. I can't go back to his what he said here any more than that. And it's all about the mindset that we have. Are we going to look at the glass half full? Are we going to take the approach of what do we need to do now, to make our business better? And it's getting it back to a situation of let's make it better than it was before. We have that opportunity right now to do a redo, if you will, and hit the reset button on the business and prepare our clinical business as a business. That's really the key thing. And so it's looking at all aspects of that business. Aaron, I'm gonna turn it over to you. As a former legislator, what we used to say is I will yield the rest of my time to Aaron Reynolds.
Well, I appreciate it. And I appreciate you just taking a moment or two to kind of cover some of that information. Because again, guys, it's not just about getting the mindset right, but then it is also making sure that kind of the checks are in place. You do have an opportunity to go through that redo. And that's probably the piece that I like the most. You get to reinvent, you get to think in a different way. And so over these next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to share a few different things with you guys. And I want you, if you've got a piece of paper, get it out. If you got pens or whatever you use, pencils, get them out. So we're going to have a little bit of fun. We're going to do some exercises, all right? If you're good with math in your head, great. If you're not, get out a calculator. And I just want, again, these are some of the things that I might sit down and do with any company I work with, whether it's a small company, whether it's a big company. I think, as we shared last week, one of my favorite clients and where I spend the vast majority of my time is ChiroHealthUSA. It's why I'm excited to be here. It's why I'm excited Kristi brought me in here. And I absolutely love what Dr. Ray Foxworth, as we've mentioned before, brings to this profession. So he makes it easy to go out and do things like this. And as we're talking behind the scenes, let's try and get this out in front of as many practices as we can to get our mindset right and to start thinking about business in a different way. So that's where Let's Get Back to Better comes from. And it works not just for your practice, but for your patients. We want them thinking as well. And remember, there was an event. This is an event, and this is the first event that we all can relate to. So when we have an event, we all start paying attention in a different way. So let's talk a little bit about how we're going to get back to better. One, we need to know thy numbers. So if we're going to make smart business decisions, we need to know thy numbers. I think this is where Kristi talks about these sessions with me. True story. About 5 weeks ago, my wife, who runs a vet clinic, we've talked about this before, we were running through everything, and I asked her a couple of numbers, and we try and stay pretty separate for household reasons, and I put her through a numbers exercise. She didn't talk to me the rest of the afternoon, but she did thank me the next day. So it's a good exercise to go through. We're going to talk about contact hours versus capacity. We're going to go through that exercise, why you should think like a manufacturer. And then I shared with you last week, we'll get into some quick scripting. And I can't express this enough, prepare, because you're going to get questions if you haven't already. All right, so step one, know your per hour versus your per minute worth. Here's where we go. Do you know your per hour worth? Do you know your per minute worth? This is an exercise you need to start to take a look at, because if you're going to make business decisions without emotion, remember, I'm not saying without passion, but without emotion, you need to know what your worth is. So you need to say to yourself, if I'm adjusting or my clinic is running at capacity, think like a manufacturer. If we're at maximum output, this is what my value is. Because our goal should be, let's be at maximum output. We should be adjusting our business so we get to maximum output. So whatever that number is, figure that out per hour. So, if it's $1,000 an hour, if it's $100 per hour, if it's $10,000 per hour, and then divide that by 60 so you know what your cost is. Understand the difference in impact of hard costs, soft costs, and emotional costs, and how to factor that so we can get to the total cost. When making a business decision, you should run them up against that per hour, per minute number. And then ask yourself, is this mission critical? Meaning my business has to have this no matter what. Is this revenue cycle critical? And I'm not talking revenue cycle in collections. I'm talking revenue cycle critical as in, does this impact my revenue? Meaning that I may have to have it, I may not have to have it, but if I do it right, it'll go to the bottom line. Or is this a nice to have? And I think we all know what nice to haves are. And then you have to ask yourself, should I be the one to do it? So should you do it? So we're going to go do the math. Here we go. This is my decision. It's a little story by Aaron. My decision to outsource my lawn. And I wish we would have had this webinar a half hour ago because my lawn guy just left. And so this is my decision. In 2011, I was traveling, going to trade shows on the weekend, different state associations, at the time working for a software company in chiropractic. And I found myself on the road and working between my weekend gig and my weekday gig, following up on the weekend stuff, and then trying to grow an organization, if you will. I went through a stretch where I actually worked 63 of 65 days. At that time, I had 2 young kids. My wife was growing a practice as well. I still have 2 young kids, relatively, and I still have my wife, so we're all still here. And I was looking around, and I thought, something's got to change. Something has to change. So I started doing some math, and these are the numbers that I had through this exercise. At that time, every hour I spent on the phone for my company, I generated over $15 in revenue. Now, that's not what I got for me. And to be fair, that doesn't mean that I was on the phone 8 hours talking every single day. You might dial the phone 100 times in the day trying to talk to people. We know what that's like. But by the time you contact with folks and you bring that all down, you've had 3 or 4 hours of talk time. That's what we call that. So actual contact time. But I knew that every hour I was on the phone, I generated $1,500 for my company. And that worked out to 10% drop down to me, which is $150 per hour. Okay? So every hour I got on the phone that I spent talking, doing my job, working with doctors, solving problems, I was generating, for me personally, $150 per hour. And I've always viewed myself as a free agent, well before I ever worked directly for myself. And so I'm looking at this, and I'm like, all right, I got this thing I don't want to do. I don't like doing it. I'm not excited to do it. And it's actually costing me money and causing me angst, hard cost, soft cost, emotional cost. So to cut my lawn and to do it right, it takes me 75 minutes. 75 minutes. All right? So 75 minutes, and if I take my $150 per hour and I divide that by 60, I'm worth $2.5 per minute. That's my per minute value. So I take my 75 minutes that it takes me to cut my lawn, and I don't love cutting my lawn, and I do want to talk about that in a second. And I take my 2.5 minutes per minute value, and I realize that every time I'm cutting my grass, it costs me personally $187.50. That's my cost. That's not my total cost. That's just my hard cost. It is a bottom line hard cost. I said I want to get back to this. I don't love cutting my lawn. For some of you, it's the most cathartic thing in the world. So I'm using this as my example. I'm challenging you to find what is your lawn thing in your practice, right? So if it's cathartic and it's rewarding and you get something from it, don't give it up. But I'm talking about, in this case, this was not the case for me. So after I spent some time investigating, I'm looking around and I'm thinking, can I hire somebody? And I did. I hired a lawn guy. He had just graduated from the vocational school up the road, and he was going to start his lawn and landscape company. So I was one of the first people, and it was $35 per instance. $35. So here, I live in Iowa during what I call grass season. We're going to cut our grass 20 to 25 times a year. So I gave an average of 22.5 times per year. So at $187.50, my cost times 22.5 times per year, my actual hard cost aggregate to cut my grass per year is, well, it's a lot of money. $4,000 is really what it looks like, $4,200 plus. If I then take my $35 per instance that my lawn guy is charging times that same 22.5 times the cost for me to outsource my lawn, $787.50. My bottom line net to pay someone to do my lawn was $3,431.25, and that was in 2011. So I haven't run the numbers today. It's different today because my numbers are different today. His numbers are different today. I do pay him more than $35. But the point here is that I had something sitting in front of me that was causing me angst. My actual hard cost, you see in front of you. My soft cost that I factored in there was my machine upkeep, the time I had to put into bags, the time I had to put into other parts. So I gave myself 3 hours. So you see my total cost that came down into this at $4,600, and you see me saving now $3,400 a year. And so friends, this is what I want you to start thinking about in your business. If any of you have read the book Traction by Gino Wickman, it's a great book. Dr. J has done an actual class on this for chiropractors, which is wonderful. But one of my favorite exercises in that book is delegate and elevate. And what it basically says is go through an exercise, and the things you don't like doing, either give them to somebody else or outsource them so you can elevate the things you do like doing. So when I look at my hard cost, my soft cost, and the emotional cost, and the bottom line gain of $3,400. This is a prime example of why two businesses on the same street, in the same market, going after the same person, offering the same product, one wins and one struggles. One is thinking of all of the ways they can make money or generate revenue or remove roadblocks. And so part of finding yourself in that kind of Zen Dr. J was talking about is getting the crap out of your way that pisses you off. Just remove it. So while I sat here working on my final touches for this webinar, excited, drinking too much coffee with jitters, I watched the guy blowing off my little patio behind me thinking, I love this investment, with a smile on my face. I invested in me. So that's what I want you guys to start thinking about. So using that, let's go into another exercise for you real quick. Contact capacity. Contact capacity. So this means how many hours could I possibly in my clinic be in contact with patients? What's my contact capacity? So while you're dealing with patients and people, you're also in manufacturing and supply chain. And I want you to think about it like that for a moment. Don't remove the human side of what makes this profession so special. So don't mix messages here, but for just a moment, think about it like manufacturing and supply chain. People have to leave their house. They have to get to your practice. They have to get into your practice. There has to be an exchange of information. There has to be some form of diagnosis. There has to be a financial conversation. There has to be an agreement. There has to be care. There has to be service. There has to be outcome. People in, people out, contact hours, and then outcomes. So if you start to think about your business like manufacturing, do you want your manufacturing plant open 10% of the time, 20% of the time, 30% of the time, 50% of the time, 80% of the time, or 100% of the time? Because we're dealing with people and cycles, it's probably not optimal to have your practice open 100% of the time. So let's be realistic. But let's also go through this exercise and ask ourselves, but are we maximizing? There's 24 hours in a day. There's 7 days in a week. There's 168 potential contact hours per week in your practice. If you're offering services 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you've got people there. If you're open on average 36 hours per week, which is, if you start looking practice to practice to practice to practice, it's kind of what you see. You're utilizing 21.4% of your available contact hours. So I'm not asking you to go to 100%. You're paying 100% for 21% utilization, by the way. So as a business coach, I don't like that math. Take that for what it's worth. I'm thinking of a good friend of mine on this call, Dr. Avidable, just recently moved. And I know because he's moved to a different state and he does a lot more work behind the scenes in chiropractic now, but he also wants to practice. He's still going to practice maybe 1 to 2 days a week in the afternoon. There's a prime example of if you're closed on Friday and you know a local chiropractor who still wants to stay fresh and you can get extra contact hours in your practice and still generate revenue, there's a prime example of keeping the doors open if it makes sense. So I want you to think along those lines. You're paying 100%, but you're utilizing 21%. So my challenge to you is, how can you get utilization to 50%? So if you're going to pay 100%, can you get contact hours to 50%? That doesn't necessarily mean I want you personally to work harder. I want you to work smarter. So when we're off this call and you're sitting with your team and you're trying to go through what I call these whiteboard exercises, which the more you get to know how I like to work, I love a whiteboard, throw it up there and let's get everything we can on it and see what sticks. I want you to put yourself through the challenge. What are ways we can generate revenue without necessarily me being the crux of it? Can it be merging with other doctors? Can it be offering other services? Can it be telehealth services? Can we increase the amount of first visits that we're seeing because we're having a consult in a different way? By the way, Kristi, would you be kind enough to also put in the chat log the telehealth white paper that Dr. Munsterman wrote? So for those of you looking at a roadmap to telehealth, this is a wonderful, wonderful roadmap. I'm not sure when Dr. Munsterman finds time to sleep, but take this and run with it. It is a wonderful roadmap. So I want you to kind of go through this exercise. Here's the next thing I want you to think about, guys, and I'm giving you a lot. You can come back and watch it. You can come back and watch at any point in time. I need you to script. Now hang in there with me, because this next part's tricky. Not only do I want you to script, I want you to practice. And right now, 70% of you are rolling your eyes. And I get it, it's uncomfortable. But I promise you right now, we've never been as uncertain as we are. And a confused brain cannot make decisions. It's what Jay started talking about. It's why I love what Dr. Jay brings to the table, because it's not just X's and O's. If the brain is confused and they can't get a clean answer from you, you can't grow your business. And what I'm about to touch on is I believe that because of this event, chiropractic is better poised to grow than it's ever been before. I know people have said it before, but for me, as someone who's always looking for opportunity, it's true, and I'll share with you why. But you have to be able to answer a question. You have to be able to give guidance. And I'm going to caution you. Don't necessarily give your direct personal opinion. There's a difference between the two, and we'll touch on it. So if your patients come in and they ask you any form of this question, I'm going to give you the get out of jail free answer that's going to allow you to pivot. If they ask you, what do you think about COVID? What are your thoughts about what's going on? Do you believe this is real? Are we on the right path? Is this real? Is this fake? Is this caused by ABC? Can you believe they shut down the economy? Can you believe they're reopening the economy? Remember, it's all over the place. Here's the one thing we know for sure. The healthier you are, the better chance you have of fighting this virus. I want to pause right there. I don't care what you say after this. I don't care what you say. That's the one line. I'm going to give you something to say, but that's the one line. Here's the one thing we know for sure. The healthier you are, the better chance you have of fighting this virus, because that is what we know for sure. That's the one thing we know. We can argue about everything else around it, but right now, the evidence continues to mount that the healthier you are, and of course, there's always exceptions to the rule, but as the masses are showing, the healthier you are, the healthier you are. And this, friends, is why we get to pivot back to chiropractic. Because now we get to talk to patients for the very first time with an event about their health and wellness strategy. And don't be afraid to talk to them. I want to talk to you about your health and wellness strategy. It's never been more important. So again, here's the one thing we know for sure. The healthier you are, the better chance you have of fighting this virus. We're working with all of our patients to create a health and wellness strategy to keep your machine running at its best. That's a follow-up. Take it for what it's worth. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, put something else in, but have that answer. Did you notice this answer talks about none of my beliefs at all whatsoever, other than the one thing that I do know to be factual in all of this? It's probably the only thing I believe to be factual so far, because there's so much information. The healthier you are, the better chance you have. So here's some event talking points, and then I'm going to wrap this up for some more Q&A. Remember, talking COVID is like talking religion and politics. Avoid getting into a confrontation. We all have different beliefs. Stick to the facts. Here's what we know for sure. And then pivot to chiropractic's role in overall health. Talk to your patients about a health and wellness strategy. Educate them. Tell them when to come here. Help them learn to stay out of high COVID contact areas, right? So you don't walk into the emergency room in downtown New York City right now unless you're fighting COVID. And to our friends in New York City, our hearts truly are with you. They are fighting a different fight than maybe someone in rural Montana. So think about those things. Understand also that opioid and alcohol abuse is on the rise. People are locked in homes. Some are handling this well, some aren't. We're going to put out marketing materials. So for those of you who are part of the Chiro Health family, and as a matter of fact, I think we'll probably extend this to everybody, whether you're part of ChiroHealthUSA or not. Next week, we'll put out a marketing pack of about 15 to 20 visuals you guys can have for free to start communicating with patients that talk about this, but we really want to pivot to this wellness strategy. And then also teaching them to come see you for any acute neuromuscular issues that would have brought them in day one, and how to stay out of high COVID contact areas. Friends, these are 3 events that you can talk about in your business that will allow you to have a conversation with patients that keep them coming to see you. So I appreciate the extra time that I got. Thanks, Dr. Munsterman, for yielding. We had a lot of stuff to cover. I went through a lot of math. I hope no one's going crazy. And I know I talk fast. So please feel free with more questions. Let us know. But we've got a ton of stuff coming. And then before we get off today, I'll share one more message, but I'll open up for other comments, questions, thoughts. Have at it.
So can I do a little rapid fire, Kristi? Because that was so genius, but I gotta get a couple of thoughts out. Can I do that real quick? So first of all, the outsourcing piece that Aaron was talking about, I'm going to tie that right back to Dr. Munsterman, because we use Dr. Munsterman we outsource basically voluntary audits for our practice. So all of our documentation gets audited by Dr. Munsterman, so we can make sure that we are compliant, so that if we ever get audited by an insurance company, we really don't have to worry. So now is the time to work on your business. You have the time to pick up a couple of files, send them to Dr. Munsterman, and let them audit your accounts. I don't want to do that internally, so I want to outsource it. My time is better spent doing the things that I'm good at. Let the expert, like Dr. Munsterman, do the outsourcing. Second, I loved all of it. Aaron and I, we can geek out for hours just talking about stuff, but the second piece that I really loved, honestly, was the scripting piece. Like, typically, I'm not a fan. Sorry, I have like a hair in my mouth. Typically, I'm not a fan of scripting, but the point of being prepared is critically important, and I do think that the language was really on point. So make sure that you pay attention to the language that Aaron used as it relates to talking to your patients. The idea of like, what is your health and wellness strategy is genius. Like, that's a conversation. I wrote that down. Like, we need to have that conversation with our patients. I've never asked that of our patients, but we need to have that conversation. And then lastly, really quickly, Dr. Foxworth and I, we sit on the Clinical Compass board. We recently published a paper on chiropractic's impact on the opioid crisis. I was a co-author on the paper. We had over 100,000 subjects in this study. The results are remarkable. So you're having a conversation about your patients and drug use and alcohol use and opioid use going up. Use this paper to educate them on the impact of chiropractic. If you see a chiropractor, not you, because you're a bunch of chiropractors or staff, but if your patients see a chiropractor or the public sees a chiropractor, they are 1.5 times to 2 times less likely to have an opioid prescription filled. And I'll make sure that I share that on the chat so you guys have access to it. But all great content that Aaron and Scott put out there, and I just kind of wanted to at least like tie it all together in my brain for you guys. So that's it.
Yeah, I appreciate you kind of taking it back in. And guys, I love that Jay said I'm not a big fan of scripting. I'm not a big fan of, because look, nobody is, me either. I love thinking on my feet. You can see it. Let's have fun. But words are important in how we say them. One of my favorite exercises that we do in training is 7 different words, 7 different meanings. And I didn't say I drank the coffee. I'm just making it up. I didn't say I drank the coffee. And you can literally say it 7 different ways. I didn't say I drank the coffee. 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 And you can go on and on and on. 7 words, 7 different meanings. And so it's putting the emphasis on the right syllable for those of us who like to play around a little bit. But the fact is that's the kind of thinking that you have to put into word choices when you come to sensitive subjects. And guys, this one is sensitive. It just is. And we're all coming from a different area. Jay is in the Washington, D.C. area. So they're looking at this entirely different with so many people in such a small space than what I'm dealing with in Iowa or what Kristi's dealing with in Mississippi or Dr. Munsterman between South Dakota and Minnesota. I mean, guys, we have a different path. And so that's why this is so important that we just get focused on what we know. There's an event happening, and chiropractic has had no better opportunity to actually have that conversation as I shared. What's your wellness strategy? What's your health strategy? Because frankly, friends, people have to have one. Let me share one more thing on that. Be sensitive. I am a lifelong big person. And I say that I've got a ton of fat boy tendencies. And so it's one thing if Dr. J in great shape is like, Aaron, you need to eat less and exercise more. Because it's like, yeah, I get it. That's easy. But I think what you can talk about is, do you have a health or wellness strategy? Do you mind if we talk about one together? Get permission to enter. And once you get permission to enter, drive it home. Drive it home. By the way, if you talk to your patients enough about a health and wellness strategy, then you'll be seeing them once a month. When you see them once a month, it's called recurring revenue. When you transition people from an acute basis to one-off to recurring revenue, let me give you another stat. I have a very good friend and a client of mine who has a lot of billing and a lot of merchant accounts behind the scenes in chiropractic. Clinics that had recurring revenue saw less than a 5% dip in overall revenue that were focused that way. Clinics that focused on one-off transactions only saw about a 50% dip. So not everyone's going to move into care plans. Not everyone's going to move into wellness care, and not everyone's going to stay just acute. But I'm telling you from a business standpoint, when you can diversify your business, and if 60% of your revenue stream is now coming in because you're having a monthly interaction with all of your patients, you're making sure the machine is running, then your business, next time this happens, we don't have the same stress.
Right.
I don't want to feel this stress again for my friends and family out there.
Mm-hmm.
None of us want to feel this again. So these are all things we hope will help avoid it. I know that there's a lot of specific questions on paybacks and loans that are coming through right now. I encourage you guys to go back to some of the older webinars where we go into great detail like that. I think that there are a ton of key takeaways you guys can get for today. Kristi, I know you wanted me to share something, but I'll let you wrap up before I do.
Might help if I turn my mic on. So we're going to talk really quick. Let me get this situated. Might help if it was right. There we go. So we've learned a lot of great things about getting the right mindset and having a different perspective on the business aspect of our practices. And you can write 1,001 notes about all these great things that you want to implement into your practice. But the bottom line is that your success in practice, your success in implementing all of this great information that you've taken in today hinges on your ability to set the right expectations and to communicate with your staff. You can have the most incredibly successful, productive doctors, but if you don't communicate and set the right expectation for your team, it's never going to take off. And again, you can have the most ambitious, productive, amazing team, but if the doctor isn't there, then you're not going to get that to take off. So where do you start? And you want to make sure that employees and you, the doctor, as the business owner, know what your responsibilities are in the practice and to each other. Some of these are real common sense. We know that we need to be able to have a positive and respectful attitude to each other, to the patients, work with honesty and integrity. This is all common sense. But as you, the doctor, also need to remember that your responsibility to your employees is to provide the proper training and support and leadership for your team. It's not just to give them a paycheck. But it goes just a little bit further and giving them the tools that they need to be successful and empowering them and trusting them to take on those responsibilities. Because you have to remember, everything you've learned here today doesn't mean that you have to implement it. You just have to make sure it happened. You have all of this amazing talent working under the roof of your office, and you can empower each one of them to take the responsibility to implement one of these things, getting your OSHA compliance off the ground. Having a team book club where they're reading traction so you can implement those practices into your office. And I know that it works because we've all done it. We love team book club at the office. Erin is great at always recommending wonderful books for us to read, and they always involve whatever it is that we're about to implement next. It's to help us get our mindset right so that he's not throwing something at us from left field. So get your team to read these books. You want to make sure that you're setting the right expectations for them as a team. It's great if they can work independently, but the bottom line is the cohesiveness and fluidity of your practice. your patient experience is based on how well they work as a team, their understanding of what everybody else does in that practice, and that no one person's job is more important than somebody else's. Yes, the person who does billing and insurance is bringing revenue into your office, but they wouldn't have any revenue to bring in if the person who sat at the front desk wasn't really good at their job and making those patients feel like family. They wouldn't be able to bring in revenue if you, the doctor, weren't effective in your treatment plan. And you might not be as effective if your CTAs who are providing the therapy good at their job. So everybody has to be able to depend on each other. And it's really important that they understand that. No one person in that practice is more important than somebody else. And you have to set that level of expectation. That they have to be able to be empowered enough to be accountable for their own work and to hold each other accountable for the work that they do. And then you have to have performance expectations. You know, one of the leading causes of turnover is the fact that people just feel like they're underappreciated. They don't get the feedback that they need to know, am I even doing a good job? Am I doing what I'm supposed to do? And it's your job as a leader and the business owner in your practice to let them know how they're doing. And don't just talk to them when they've done something wrong or didn't do something right or forgot to do something altogether. Write those expectations down. Help them to set goals in their positions and then give them feedback. Let them know. And if they get to something that they don't understand, and trust me, when it comes to compliance, Dr. Munsterman wrote some great information in that OSHA compliance white paper. But it could be very overwhelming for somebody who has no idea how to implement that in practice. So open up that dialogue and be available to work one-on-one with your team for a few minutes each week so that they know, okay, here's what I understand, here's my next steps, and then they get your feedback to know how well they're doing in accomplishing that goal. And when it comes to setting goals, you want to make, this goal was to do X, Y, Z, and I was able to do X, Y, but not Z. Don't make them so that they are so big that it's like unachievable, because that is very demotivating for your team and will lead to employee turnover. Make sure it's relevant and it's applicable to your growth in your practice and achieving your practice goals. And make sure they're time-based. They can't go on forever. We like to set goals that are like every 90 days. So this is what we're going to accomplish in 90 days. And quite frankly, that time frame is the kind of thing that fires me up. If you tell me I have 90 days to accomplish something, I'm going to try to do it in 45. Aaron will tell you it's like my thing. I cannot help it. But set a time base, because they have to know by when that goal has to be achieved so that they can juggle their other responsibilities as well as whatever the special project is that you have tasked them with doing. You want to make sure that you're communicating your expectations. They want to be crystal clear and that they understand the why behind why we're going to implement this OSHA policy, the why behind why we have to read this book, the why behind anything that you're doing. That's how you're going to get them to understand why it is so important. And last, you're going to communicate all this in weekly team meetings. Now, I know most doctors out there think that team meetings are a big waste of time because that's a 30 minutes or an hour that you're not treating patients. But I want you to change your mindset and the way that you see this time as the time that you're taking to invest in your employees. This is where we're going to talk about where we are in reaching our goals. This is where we're going to talk about any roadblocks that we have in achieving those goals. You're going to provide training for them and empower them to be able to take that up a notch. And you'll be surprised by how much just giving each person on your team a task that they're responsible for, how much it empowers them. And you're going to find hidden talents on your team that you had no idea existed. Let me just caution you on one thing. Don't always pick the same person. Don't pick the same person. So I am a former control freak who used to want everything to myself. And I didn't like anybody else to do it because nobody could do it better than me, which was a big fat lie. And what happens is I would take on so much stuff that I was very ineffective in getting it done. And it took a lot of conversations with Dr. Foxworth and Aaron to get me out of this cycle. But what I also did when I took on everything was that I trained them to give me everything and not to other people. What happened is we started delegating that, and we started spreading the love of all the different things that we were taking on in the office and different projects. And what we found was that there are some incredible people with some hidden talents that we were not utilizing for many, many years. And that was a big mistake on my part and everybody else's. So make sure you spread the love and you spread the wealth with your team.
You know, it's funny, and I know we've gone over on time a little bit here, and I blame myself, and that's okay. But I just, it's fun to watch people present and me finding myself watching. Like, yeah, that's right. That's the stuff. That's good stuff. So, Kristi, that's great stuff. The team meeting stuff, guys, that is as important as anything. You got to take the temperature. You got to find out what's working, what isn't working, what are you hearing, what do we need to change. And I'll share with you, when I go into a meeting, one of my favorite sayings is, I want us all to participate and communicate. And my goal is that I actually have the worst ideas in the room. So if there are 10 people, I want to have the worst ideas because I know I'm going to work and I'm going to try. And if we come out of this and everybody else has better ideas, man, we're going to have a great meeting. And that's the way you want to look at it. Remove your ego, try and find the best idea you possibly can, and then go execute. And it becomes so much more fun. It's why all of us on this call are smiling, because we're all telling these lessons we've learned. They're like, if I would have known this earlier, I could have been so much further. But that's just kind of how it works. And so you kind of learn over time. I know we've gone over time. We're going to come back and do this. We'll have you submit questions way in advance as well, so we can be even more respectful of time. But I know that, Kristi, if you don't mind to get everyone out of here, I think you wanted me to share something. And if there's any closing comments before I do, feel free.
I have a comment. Kristi, I loved that presentation. That was awesome. You were spot on. So doctors out there, pay attention to what Kristi just taught, because it's critically important to engage your staff so you can drive your practice to what Aaron said at the beginning to be even better.
Yeah, that's great.
Exactly.
Okay, Aaron, take it away.
So I'm sure most of you guys have heard this. If you've been on Facebook, you probably have read this already. But I have been surprised. I brought it up to my wife, and she hadn't seen it. And I shared it with Kristi and Dr. Munsterman, some others on a call the other day, and they hadn't seen it. And of course, I don't even understand how Facebook does or doesn't work anymore. It changes every day. So maybe you have heard this, maybe you haven't. I read this 2 weeks ago, and I will share that for me personally, this has just kept me grounded through this whole process. And so this will take me about 3 minutes. If you're still on, or if you're watching this on a recording, try and clear the mechanism for a moment, meaning just take a deep breath, look around you, slow some things down. And let me just share this with you because I think this truly hits home. I heard that we are all in the same boat, but it's not like that. We are in the same storm, but not in the same boat. Your ship could be shipwrecked and mine might not be, or vice versa. For some, quarantine is optimal, a moment of reflection, of reconnection, easy and flip-flops with a cocktail or a coffee. For others, this is a desperate financial and family crisis. For some that live alone, they're facing endless loneliness, while for others, it is peace, rest, and time with their mother, father, sons, and daughters. With the $600 weekly increase in unemployment, some are bringing in more money to their households than when they were working. Others are working more hours for less money due to pay cuts or loss in sales. Some families of four just received $3,400 from the stimulus, while other families of four saw nothing. Some were concerned about getting a certain candy for Easter's, while others were concerned if there would be enough bread or milk or eggs for the weekend. Some want to go back to work because they don't qualify for unemployment and are running out of money, and others want to kill those who break the quarantine. Some are home spending 2 to 3 hours a day helping their child with online schooling, while others are spending 2 to 3 hours a day to educate their children on top of 10 to 12 hours working per day. Some have experienced the near death of the virus. Some have already lost someone from it, and some are not sure if their loved ones are going to make it. And others don't believe this is a big deal. Some have faith in God and expect miracles during 2020. Others say the worst is yet to come. So friends, we are not in the same boat. We are going through a time when our perceptions and needs are completely different. Each of us will emerge in our own way from this storm. It's very important to see beyond what is seen at first glance, not just looking, actually seeing. We're all on different ships during this storm, experiencing a very different journey. So remember that when you're working with your patients. Remember that when you're talking to your family. Remember that when you're talking to your friends. Remember that when we're trying to uplift each other through this. Remember that we all have a different experience through this. But if we remember who we are and what we do and that we're here to serve, we're all going to weather this storm and be better for it. So I thank you guys for the opportunity to come on 2 weeks in a row. It does my heart good. It does my emotions good. If you need anything from me, please let me know. And to our other presenters, thanks for letting me call you on last minute as well. And Kristi, I'll let you finish.
Aw, thank you, Aaron. You might just get recruited on a weekly basis. You never know. So I want to thank everybody for taking the time, and a little extra time at that, to hang out with us today. I say I love a lot of people, but I truly love and depend on each one of these gentlemen on a more than usual basis right now, probably. So I'm so excited that we were able to make this happen, and you never know who's going to pop up again next week as we address the ever-changing COVID-19 situation in America. But we do have a webinar that's not related to COVID-19 on Tuesday with Dr. Mitch Malley, and we're going to talk about the 5 hidden secrets of low back pain, sciatica, and scoliosis. So that should be exciting. We've never done a webinar with technique before, so it ought to be awesome. I'm so excited. We tested all kinds of new cool stuff for that. So make sure you check it out. Just know that every webinar that's coming up, and there's a huge lineup you can look at ChiroHealthUSA.com/webinars. And our webinar reminder emails will go out on Monday, so you can see everything coming up for the next 2 months. And just know that Dr. Jay Greenstein is one of those speakers that's going to be coming up very, very soon. Dr. Munsterman is my BFF, and he's up here every week. And Aaron just gave me an idea. So, I mean, you can bet you're going to see him pop up on that webinar schedule again real soon. So y'all have an amazing rest of your day and a fabulous week. And if you think of any questions for our amazing panel of experts, email me, Kristi at ChiroHealthUSA.com, and I will make sure they get an answer for you.
Thanks, Kristi. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, everybody.
Peace.